Hey, what's up everyone? I know in the last video I said that the next part would be about the police interrogation of Matthew Greenberg, but I am so freaking tired of getting comments about CTE. First, I would get comments about how stupid I am for doing this because it was steroids and rage, cut and dry. And then when I made the videos about how steroids played no part in this crime, then the CTE comments started. And I'm at the point where it is just time for people to know word for word what the police reports say about the CTE and whether or not that was determined to be the cause of the crime. Another thing that these people love to ask me is, why am I wasting my time doing this? So I'm gonna address that at the end of the video. I'm gonna air some grievances out here to people in my comments. And I also want to give a super big shout out to Steph Orton for giving me this great tip about the passing of Dr. Aston. I wanted to give her credit in the video that I made about that, but I didn't hear back from her, and I promised that I wouldn't use her name or information without her permission, and true to my word, I didn't do that. But then she did get back to me and said that she didn't mind, so I want to make sure that I give her a big shout out today. Thank you so much, Steph Orton. That was awesome. And I just want you all to know, I do read your comments, and any tips like this, I do look into them. I do follow you guys, what you suggest I should look into. I do, because this isn't all about me. This is about us just trying to figure out what's going on here. So I just wanted to make sure that I point that out, because the comments that I have to make at the end of this video do not reflect on the people who are actually contributing things, making suggestions, sharing thoughts about this. It's different. So thank you so much, Steph Orton. You freaking rock, girl. Thanks. Alright, so this is Detective Harper's summary, and this is the section about the brain study by Sports Legacy Institute. There is another section in these police documents that contains more information about this, but the other information was written up by Sports Legacy. But this right here that you can see on the screen right now, this is in the police files. This is the police conclusion that they came to from reading the findings of the Sports Legacy study. And we will look at those conclusions that Sports Legacy Institute provided to police eventually. Okay, so here we go. In September 2007, the Sports Legacy Institute in Massachusetts released the findings of a study done on the brain of Chris Benoit. In early October 2007, I received a packet of information detailing the results of post-mortem neuropathological tests performed on Benoit's brain. According to the summary prepared by the Sports Legacy Institute, or SPI, Chris Benoit's brain was examined microscopically to identify tau protein. SPI reports that tau proteins become phosphorylated and visible after prior traumatic brain injuries. The report advises that during the examination of Chris Benoit's brain, they found abnormal accumulations of tau protein in neurons and fibers in several areas, including the neocortex, basal ganglia, substantia nigra, and brainstem. These accumulations of tau protein were reportedly in the form of neurofibrillary tangles and neuritic threads. And I will be explaining what all of this means when we dig a bit more into this. You see, when you study clinical psychology, they teach you physiology of behavior, which focuses on neurological and physiological conditions such as CTE and Alzheimer's, and the effect they may or may not have on an individual's behaviors. And I still have my textbook from Penn State, and lucky for us, it's the 2010 edition of the text. So we have a look at what science knew about these degenerative disorders closer to the time these events occurred. How cool is that? So I have a lot more coming about this CTE Alzheimer's stuff, so be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you're notified when future videos drop. But continuing on here, SPI states that it is their belief that these areas are most likely post-traumatic expressions of prior recognized or unrecognized concussions. It is their belief. Keyword. Feel free to watch part 1 and 2 of episode 15 to see what the medical examiner Dr. Sperry said about the reliability of the science behind CTE. SPI advises that a form of chronic brain damage referred to as chronic traumatic encephalopathy can be caused by repetitive head trauma like concussions sustained during contact sports. While investigating chronic traumatic encephalopathy and the abnormal accumulations of tau proteins, I learned, and remember in this section of the report, I is Detective Harper. Detective Harper learned that experts believe the conditions can lead to neurodegeneration, cognitive impairment, and dementia. The research seems to be similar to information released involving frontal lobe injuries to the brain. Experts in the brain injury field believe that these injuries can cause antisocial behavior and irritability or aggressive behavior. And we'll eventually talk more about frontal lobe injuries and the effect that may have on cognitive impairment as well. It appears that Nancy Benoit may have noticed some of these types of behavioral changes in Chris Benoit in the months prior to June 25, 2007. This was apparent in the text messages sent to her husband in the month of May 2007. And you can see all of those text messages in parts 9 and 10 of my series. There's a link below to the complete playlist. And remember, this video is part of a series, so each episode builds on information covered in previous episodes. Alright, now here comes their big conclusion after reading all the evidence and studying all the evidence that Sports Legacy provided about CTE and Benoit's brain. Are you ready? Here it comes. The research into chronic traumatic encephalopathy and frontal lobe brain injury does not explain why the incident at the Benoit residence occurred. The research does give some insight into possible behavior issues that could have played a role in the incident. And like I said, we'll dig more into all the ways it could have when we look closer at this Alzheimer's and CTE. But still, it's right here in plain text. These are Detective Harper's words. These aren't my words. It's right here. Chronic traumatic encephalopathy and frontal lobe brain injury does not explain why the incident at the Benoit residence occurred. It does not. It could give some insight into possible behavior issues that could have played a role in the incident. But I'm telling you, the police don't know that. Nobody knows that for a fact. And there's no way to prove that. And if you do research into CTE for yourself, you'll find that it's a theory. It's not a fact. It's a theory. Yes, they can prove by looking at the brain that these tau protein tangles are present, but the experts do not understand how these tangles affect behavior and mood, if even at all. They don't know any of this for sure. And they also cannot explain why it affects some negatively and not others. And usually in statistics, that means there's another variable at work here. Because if we just say that it was the CTE that did it, then everyone who ever had a concussion could be a potential threat to anyone if they get so out of mind that they just snap and go on a rampage. And do we really want to go down that road where we just want to start looking at anybody who could possibly have these tau protein clusters as, we don't feel safe with them? Because it can't be both ways. I know myself personally, I'm not quite willing to go down that road because that would mean that a lot of my favorite wrestlers could be potentially homicidal maniacs, and I'm just not quite willing to believe that that could be true. So like I keep saying, I believe something else happened here, and what that is, I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever know, but from what I'm seeing in these police reports, it doesn't have anything to do with steroids. There were no signs of rage or struggle in the home, and it didn't have anything to do with the CTE. So what else is there? There's something missing. You don't have to believe Benoit is innocent to question what happened here. That's my point, okay? It's not that hard to figure out. I'll leave a link to this article below. 10 wrestlers who suffered major concussions and kept wrestling, and Benoit isn't on this list. But we'll talk about that more in a future video. There's a few other things that I want to say right now though. I am not claiming that I think Benoit is innocent, and I'm certainly not trying to convince anyone of that either. I'm not discounting anything that any family might know about this beyond what's in the police reports, nor am I in any way trying to be disrespectful to anyone. Now, please pay attention because I'm about to tell you why I'm doing this, as in what is my purpose here, my end plan, and it is simply this. Information in these police reports contradict what I personally believed to be facts about this case. And if I was so wrong about it, then probably others are too. I'm 45 and I've been a wrestling fan my entire life. Although, as I've stated before, I was not a fan of Benoit. I was more of a fan of the Hardys and Edge and Christian. And of course, Undertaker. I've been watching him from day one, literally. Benoit just didn't appeal to me. I'm old enough to remember this happening in real time. I watched the news updates as they came in and watched shows like Nancy Grace that claimed to have the most recent info and interviews with those involved. I had a 5-year-old son at the time this happened, so yeah, Benoit was instantly guilty in my mind. And I didn't question anything. Not like I was a fan of the guy, so it wasn't for me how it was for some who felt they lost their hero. But then time went on and I forgot all about it. But my 5-year-old grew up to be a wrestling fan. He asked me about Benoit and what had happened. And me, thinking I had a clear understanding of what happened, I told him the classic story everyone tells. Roid rage, CTE, murder, suicide. A few years ago, when all of the news broke about Jeffrey Epstein's suicide, my son randomly asked me, "Did Benoit have a broken neck?" And I couldn't answer that question because I didn't have a clue. As a mom, wanting to have an answer for my kid, I set about doing some internet searches. But internet searches gave me no answers. And it was at this point that I noticed that every article I read said the exact same thing. And I know, they should all say the same thing, right? If it's the truth and they're all reporting the truth, then it should match up. I get that. But this was different. The articles didn't just contain the same information. It was almost word for word written the same way. No nuance or deviation in sentence structure, paragraph formation, things like that. So digging even deeper, I found a website that claimed to have the Benoit police files. So I started digging through it, and I couldn't believe what I was reading. I questioned the authenticity of the documents. That's when I filed an open records request with the Fayette County Sheriff's Office, asking for the records. And within a few days, I received a file that was the same thing that I found on that website. So it was legit. I couldn't believe it. When it hit me that just about everything I believed about this Benoit crime was false, the first thing I thought of was how I had passed on this false knowledge to my son without even a second thought. And I wasn't okay with that. So I decided maybe I should do these videos so that other people can see these pages of police files too. But you see, I'm trying to do this in a way that you can see it for yourself and make up your own minds about what you think happened. Sure, I share with you my thoughts and ideas on possibilities that come to my mind. But it's important to understand those are only my ideas. Are my ideas biased because I believe Benoit is innocent? Again, no. Maybe to some it appears that I'm biased because I'm objectively asking questions. But asking questions does not mean I condone the act. It's also important to understand that my videos are focused on the information in these police files as it is compared to mainstream news stories, and that is it. As I've already said, I have no doubt that the families have a better understanding of the facts, and I am not contesting that. But the one fact that will never change is that nobody knows exactly what went on that weekend in June 2007, except for the people who were in that home. And as an outsider, the closest look available to me are these documents, the words of the investigators who were there firsthand and who wrote down their observations in real time. And those words are not consistent with the story of rage, steroids, and CTE. So what's my point? My point is, when you read these police files, when you objectively look at the evidence, It's clear that something else happened here. Something other than steroids, rage, and CTE. But AmKay, you just said you're not saying Benoit is innocent. And yeah, I'm still not saying that Benoit is innocent. But it says in plain text in the pages of these documents, as police follow leads, their conclusions are that these things, steroids, rage, CTE, are not explanations for why this crime took place. So all of my commenters out there who think Benoit did this, steroids, CTE, end of story. You can believe that all you want. But just because we believe something to be true does not mean that it is true. And that includes me. My ideas and research into all of this are just that, ideas. And not once have I tried to convince anyone that I'm right. See, the key difference between myself and the mindset of these commenters is that at least I have the understanding and acceptance of the fact that I could be wrong. Some of these commenters fail to recognize that, but they also fail to recognize that they could be wrong as well. So, stupid is as stupid does, I suppose. But we're supposed to trust the science, right? Okay, the science says steroids, rage, CTE do not offer any explanation as to what happened. The end. So I won't be replying to any more comments that just say how stupid I am because I'm asking questions. I've learned it's not possible to reason with people like that. They don't really care to understand anything. They just get off on thinking they're smarter than anyone else, and they have no clue how completely idiotic they come off. Little dick energy, as I usually call that. And anyone who wants to say that I just ignore comments that disagree with me, I'm telling you right now, that's bullcrap. I've said from the beginning, I'm not trying to convince anyone that I'm right. I'm showing you the evidence and the words of those who were there firsthand, and I'm sharing my own thoughts about what I'm reading. I encourage anyone watching to think for themselves and make up their own minds, and I encourage people to have a discussion about what could have happened. But as long as we just shut down the discussion with insults and try to guilt trip each other into feeling like it's taboo to even ask questions about this, we're not getting anywhere. But that's all I have for you today. Still more Benoit stuff coming. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you like what you see here, and if you'd like to support the channel, you'll find a link to my Cash App in the description box below. And this is AmKay, and you have been watching Purple Sky 11. And as always, I hope you have a great day. Bye!